I try to make it a really good point to point out how people act and their personality, how they move, all right, and the words and phrases that they use that can show you what their inner spirit is. And you can only do that once you start following the laws and learn how to discern the worldly mindset from the spiritual mindset and be in the spiritual mindset, all right, and spiritually in tune with the world, so that way you can see the play out of the two characteristics, all right? What's in the world stays in the world. What is in heaven lives eternally in heaven, on this earth and in heaven. So with that being said, we see a lot of preachers and pastors always use the word God, okay? InfoWars only, and it once in the blue moon they'll talk about God, but they only use that word God. They talk about politics, Illuminati, all this other stuff, the financial banks, the economics, everything into that one world order. They'll talk about all that other stuff, all right? But with people like him that are not spiritually in tune with the Lord, they'll also have, when they talk about God, they'll throw curveballs. They'll throw curveballs with the thing they'll say and mix in a little bit of truth with a little bit of lie. You know, mixing all together, but if you're not spiritually in tune, you won't see it and know what to take in and throw away. So now I'm going to sit down and break everything down of these characteristics, so that way you can see this is an example of what I'm talking about. But before I do, we know for a fact that in the beginning, the Lord sits down and he says, I am Yahweh, the one true God of the Hebrews of old. Now, if you sit down and you talk to a Muslim and you ask them, is Allah the same thing as Yahweh? They're going to look at you and go, oh, so you know the name of God, Yahweh. Say yes, is that the same God? They're going to say yes. Even though they call it, they won't change the whole 9 yards, they'll tell you yes. I say, okay, I'm going to stay down the straight path of the truth then. All right, because it does state that it's Yahweh of the Hebrews, which went into the new covenant, and I'm not segregating, separating, so everybody can be fulfilled by the death of Yeshua, the Messiah, all right, that rose from the dead for all our sins, that followed the path by faith and works. So with that being said, we always see God, God, God. There's many of gods. Nobody never specific says God, the one true God, no nothing. So for him to come online on his little news station and say the word Yahweh is letting you know what is going on, and you have to be spiritually in tune to peep it out and how it's done. In the beginning, he says that he's read many of books and all this other stuff. You looked at some of his stuff in the past, don't say, hey, I just know Jesus Christ died on the cross for our sins and we're supposed to do this, and he'll go be like blah, 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 and all this other stuff. He'll sit down and admit the truth and then blaspheme it, and then sit down and start mixing it in with rhetoric and all this other stuff, while letting you know what's going on in the world and throwing it in your face and letting you know that they're throwing it in your face. Be all right, because that is how the devil works. He mixes in a little bit of truth with a little bit of lie. But you have to be spiritual, in tune, to see it with a spiritual eye. So, as he is talking, he's saying that he's read many philosophy books, all right, and then he gives the number and all this other stuff in history books and all this stuff and religious books and everything else. Then they start talking about the Illuminati, all right. Then after he says that, after he says that, he gets into what he ate, all right. And before he starts getting into what he ate, he states really quick, it seems that the strange is more interesting than fiction. Bam, he says it real quick. That's the first denial. Then he gets into what he eats and the characteristic of how he feels and who he is, by letting you know through his characteristics. It is not just a phrase. He says, I was just eating organic chicken, bit my lip, I seemed to stumble and stutter and folly, froth at the mouth, bite myself, trying to just come to an understanding of all this. Now, anytime we know those characteristics carried in the guy who had a legion of demons in him, that was by the cave, that Yeshua cast them out, put them in the pigs and into the pigs, and they went over the cliff into the ocean. We see this on TV and movies play out, these same characteristics of demons and legion of demons in people, when they, especially in the movie Exorcist, when they try to get them out of them and exorcise them out. So now he's letting you know that it's the demon inside of me. This is who I am. He just told you the characteristics by playing it off in a phrase. So then while they're talking, all right, now remember that was the first denial. The strange is more and seems more interesting than the fiction, calling God's word and what's going on in fiction. So after they're talking to a guy about the Antichrist Illuminati. The guy invokes the name Yahweh in the midst of this Yahweh, all right, the one true God, going against the Antichrist and all this other stuff. So while they're talking and talking about the Illuminati, they're speaking the truth about what's going on and throwing that in your face the whole 9 yards. He comes back, he says, yeah, so who is this Yahweh? Second denial. All right? And he said, oh yeah, Yahweh made all these beautiful things, there's all this other stuff. All right, but then it's going to come and destroy all the fish in the ocean and the plants and everything else. All right? So why he is saying that, all right, what God, all right, and then after he says that, he says what God would come and he says it quick, he says what God will come and make everybody ugly and do all this other stuff. That's the third denial. I'm going to sit down and say what God would actually do that. The same one true God, Yahweh, that flooded the earth because of all the iniquities and what had happened with the fallen ones in the Nephilim during Noah's time. The same God that destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah because of the atrocities. The same God that destroyed Babylon, all right, and took away these people away from their land and put them in exile because of their atrocities. The same God that is in the Bible that has done the same thing and the same characteristics because nothing's changed. But this is going to be the last go around. So after he says that, he says, well, God, that was a third denial. And after saying this, the guy doesn't even say Yahweh's name anymore. They start just saying God. Because he sees the characteristics and what's going on. So I left the link below. Look at the characteristics and the things that I talk about. It's very important that you be spiritually in tune, because that way you find a discernment and know how to filter out the tricks and the trades of Lucifer.